Veltar had been working at the Deep Space Watch station for 23 years. Every day he sat at his desk and looked at the big screens that showed him what was happening in space. The screens told him about stars, planets, space rocks, and sometimes ships from other worlds. Today was different. Today the screens were showing him something that made no sense. Veltar had 4 eyes like all his people, the Zephrians. 2 eyes looked at the main screen while his other 2 eyes checked the smaller screens around his desk. All the screens were showing the same thing. There was something big coming toward their part of space, and it was not like anything he had ever seen before. The thing was moving fast. Very fast, but that was not the strange part. Ships could move fast in space. The strange part was how heavy the thing seemed to be. Veltar pressed buttons on his desk and asked the computer to check the readings again. The computer beeped and showed him the same numbers. The thing coming toward them was very small compared to a planet, but it was almost as heavy as a small star. That cannot be right, Veltar said to himself. He had learned about space and physics in school. Nothing could be that small and that heavy at the same time. If something was that heavy, it would fall apart. The gravity would crush it into a tiny ball. But this thing was not falling apart. It was moving through space like it was as light as a feather. But the computer said it was heavier than a mountain made of solid metal. Veltar called his boss. "Sir, I need you to look at something." His boss, Kreneval, walked over to Veltar's desk. Kreneval was older and had been working at the station for 40 years. He had seen many strange things in space. "What is it, Veltar?" Kreneval asked. "Look at these readings, sir. There is something coming toward us, but the numbers make no sense." Kreneval looked at the screens. His 4 eyes moved from one number to another. After a few minutes, he shook his head. "Your machine is broken," Kreneval sighed. "Nothing can be that heavy and move like that. Fix your computer and stop wasting time." But Veltar knew his computer was not broken. He had checked it 3 times. All the other computers at the station were showing the same thing. Something was out there, and it was like nothing they had ever seen before. Veltar looked at the main screen again. The thing was getting closer. He could see it now as a tiny dot of light. It was still very far away, but it was definitely real. It was not a mistake or a broken computer. The thing was shaped like a long metal stick with bumps and points sticking out of it. It was gray and black, and it looked old and beaten up. There were marks and scars on its surface, like it had been in many fights. Veltar had seen ships from many different worlds. Some were round like balls, some were long and thin like snakes, some looked like flowers or trees because they were grown instead of built. But this ship looked different. It looked mean and dangerous, like it was made for fighting. The computer kept beeping and showing new information about the strange ship. It was getting closer and moving faster. But the most confusing part was still how heavy it was. According to the computer, the ship had the mass of a small moon, but it was only as big as a large building. Veltar tried to understand how this was possible. In school, he had learned that heavy things needed to be big. Light things could be small, but this ship was breaking all the rules he knew about how things worked in space. Maybe the ship was made of some special metal that was much heavier than normal metal. Veltar had heard stories about metals that were so heavy that a piece the size of his hand would weigh as much as a car. But even those metals could not make something this heavy and this small. As Veltar watched, the ship changed direction slightly. It was now heading straight for the Zephrian home system. The computer calculated that it would reach their space in 2 days. Veltar felt worried. If this ship was as heavy as the computer said, and if it crashed into their planet, it would destroy everything. It would be like a star hitting their world. He called his boss again. "Sir, you need to see this. The thing is coming toward our home planet." Kreneval came back to Veltar's desk. This time he looked more carefully at the screens. He saw the ship's path and how fast it was moving. "Even if your computer is broken," Kreneval said slowly, "we should tell the government about this. They need to know that something is coming." Veltar sent a message to the Zephrian High Command. The High Command was the group of important people who made decisions for all Zephrians. They had big ships with weapons, and they protected Zephrian. Space from dangers, the message was simple. Unknown object approaching Zephrian space. Very large mass detected. Arrival in 2 days, please advise. The answer came back quickly. Sensor malfunction. No object detected by other stations. Continue normal operations. Veltar felt frustrated. The High Command did not believe him. They thought his computers were broken, just like his boss had thought, but Veltar kept watching the strange ship. Every hour it got closer. Every hour the computer showed the same impossible readings. The ship was real, and it was coming whether the High Command believed it or not. As the hours passed, other watch stations began to detect the ship too. At first they also thought their computers were broken. But when all the stations started reporting the same thing, the High Command began to pay attention. The ship was not trying to hide. It was moving in a straight line towards Zephrian space, and it was broadcasting signals. The signals were very simple, just numbers and pictures that showed where different stars were located. The signals also contained something else. There were symbols that looked like writing, but they were not in any language the Zephrians knew. The computer tried to translate the symbols, but it could not understand them. Finally, after many hours of work, the computer figured out what the symbols meant. The message was short and simple. This is a ship from Earth. We are humans. We come in peace. Earth was not a planet that Zephrians knew about. They had maps of all the stars and planets in their part of space, but there was no planet called Earth on any of their maps. The High Command sent ships to meet the strange vessel. These ships were part of the first contact fleet. Their job was to meet new alien species and talk to them. The ships were beautiful and peaceful looking. They were grown like plants instead of built like machines, and they had smooth curves and bright colors. Veltar watched on his screens as the first contact fleet moved toward the human ship. The Zephrian ships looked graceful and elegant as they flew through space. They moved like fish swimming through water. The human ship looked very different. It moved like a shark hunting for food. It was fast and powerful, and it seemed to cut through space instead of flowing through it. When the two fleets got close to each other, Veltar could see the size difference. The Zephrian ships were large and impressive, but the human ship was bigger. It was longer than 3 Zephrian ships put together, and it was covered with bumps and points that looked like weapons. The Zephrian fleet sent a message to the human ship. It was a peaceful message that said, "Welcome to Zephrian space. We come in peace. Please respond." The human ship answered quickly. This time the message was in perfect Zephrian language. Somehow the humans had learned to speak like Zephrians. In just a few hours. "This is the Earth ship Indomitable," the message said. "You are in human space. You have 30 minutes to explain why you are here or leave this area. This is your only warning." Veltar felt confused. Human space? But this was Zephrian space. The Zephrians had been living here for hundreds of years. How could the humans say it belonged to them? The admiral of the first contact fleet, Kethmos, sent another message to the human ship. "We are Zephrians. This is our space. We have lived here for many generations. We do not understand your claim." The human ship's answer was cold and simple. "Your 30 minutes starts now." Veltar watched the screens with growing fear. Something was very wrong. The humans were acting like they owned this part of space, but the Zephrians had never heard of humans before today. The computer kept showing the impossible readings from the human ship. It was still impossibly heavy for its size. And now Veltar could see that it had many weapons. Big weapons. Weapons that looked like they could destroy planets. The Zephrian admiral tried to explain to the humans that there must be some mistake. He sent messages about Zephrian history and showed maps of their territory. He explained that Zephrians were peaceful people who just wanted to talk, but the humans did not seem interested in talking. They just kept saying that this was human space and that the Zephrians needed to leave. Veltar looked at his computer again. The human ship was not just heavy, it was impossibly dense. It was like someone had taken a piece of a star and squeezed it into the shape of a ship, but stars could not be squeezed. They would explode or collapse into black holes. Unless ... Unless the humans had learned how to control forces that the Zephrians did not understand. Maybe the humans knew secrets about physics and space that other species had never discovered. The thought scared Veltar. If the humans could build ships that broke the laws of physics, what else could they do? What kind of weapons did they have? What kind of power did they control? On his screen, Veltar watched as the 30 minutes ran out. The Zephrian fleet was still trying to talk to the humans. They were still trying to explain that this was all a misunderstanding, but the human ship was done talking. Veltar could see weapon ports opening along its hull. Energy was building up inside the ship. Something terrible was about to happen. Veltar realized that he was about to witness the first battle between humans and another alien species. And based on the readings from his computer, he was very afraid that the Zephrians were not ready for what was coming. Admiral Kethmos stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Harmony of Stars. The ship was beautiful, like all Zephrian vessels. Its walls were not made of metal, but grown from special plants that could live in space. The walls were smooth and curved, colored in soft blues and greens that reminded everyone of home. Kethmos had been the leader of the first contact fleet for 15 years. His job was to meet new alien species and make friends with them. In all those years he had met 17 different kinds of aliens. Some looked like giant insects. Some looked like walking trees. Some were made of gas and lived in clouds. But all of them had wanted to talk and trade and learn about each other. The human ship was different. It did not want to talk. It wanted the Zephrians to leave. "Admiral," said his communications officer, Lafin, "the human ship is not responding to our friendship signals." Kethmos looked at the main screen. The human ship hung in space like a dark knife. It was long and thin, covered in sharp edges and weapon ports. Scars and burn marks covered its hull, telling stories of old battles. It looked nothing like a ship that wanted to make friends. "Keep trying," Kethmos said. "Send them our history files. Show them our star maps. Maybe they do not understand that we live here." Lafin pressed buttons on his control panel. Information flowed from the Zephrian ship to the human vessel. The files contained thousands of years of Zephrian history. They showed how Zephrians had lived in this part of space for centuries. They showed cities and farms and families. They showed that Zephrians were peaceful people who loved art and music and growing things. The human ship received all the information in just a few seconds. Kethmos was impressed. The humans must have very fast computers to read so much information so quickly. The humans sent information back. But it was not what Kethmos expected. The human files showed star maps too. But in these maps, all the space around them belonged to humans. The maps showed human colonies on planets that Zephrians thought were empty. They showed human mining operations in asteroid fields that Zephrians had never explored. They showed a vast human empire that stretched across the galaxy. How is this possible? Kethmos asked. "We have never seen humans before." "How can they claim to own so much space?" His science officer, Temrock, studied the human data. "Admiral, these maps show that humans have been in space for over 200 years. They claim to have colonies in 47 star systems." But we have been exploring space for 300 years, Kethmos said. "How did we never meet them?" "Maybe they were hiding," Temrock suggested. "Some species prefer to stay hidden until they are strong enough to defend themselves." Kethmos nodded. That made sense. Young species often hid from older, stronger ones until they were ready to join the galactic community. But the human claims were still confusing. How could they own so much space without anyone knowing? The human ship sent another message. This time it included pictures and videos. Kethmos watched as the screen showed human cities on distant planets. The cities were huge, with millions of humans living and working in them. Great ships moved between the stars, carrying goods and people. Space stations the size of moons orbited human worlds. "Admiral," Lafin said, his voice shaking, "if this is real, then humans are not a small species. They are a major galactic power." Kethmos felt cold. A major galactic power that no one had heard of. A species that could hide an entire empire from the rest of the galaxy. What kind of technology did they have? What kind of weapons? He looked at the human ship again. It was just sitting there, waiting. Not moving, not attacking, just waiting for the Zephrians to leave. But Kethmos could see weapon ports all along its hull, big weapon ports. The ship looked like it was built for war. Send a message to High Command, Kethmos ordered. Tell them we have found a major alien species. Tell them the humans claim this space belongs to them. Ask for instructions. While they waited for an answer from home, Kethmos tried to learn more about the humans. He sent polite questions to their ship. Where did they come from? How long had they been in space? What did they want? The humans answered some questions, but not others. They said they came from a planet called Earth. They said Earth was in a star system called Sol. They said humans had been traveling in space for 237 years, but they would not say how many humans there were. They would not say how many ships they had. They would not say how many worlds they controlled. When Kethmos asked these questions, the humans just said, that information is classified. Classified was a word that meant secret. It was a military word. It made Kethmos nervous. The answer from High Command finally came. Continue peaceful contact. Do not provoke hostilities. Learn everything you can about human capabilities. Do not leave the area. Kethmos sighed. High Command wanted him to stay and gather information, but the humans wanted him to leave. This was going to be difficult. He sent another message to the human ship. We have orders from our government to remain in this area and continue peaceful contact. We do not wish to fight. Can we find a solution that makes everyone happy? The human response was quick and cold. You have 15 minutes to begin leaving this area. After that, you will be considered hostile forces in human space. Hostile forces. That was definitely a military term. Kethmos felt his heart's beating. Faster, Zephrians had 2 hearts, and both of them were racing now. Admiral, Kemrock said, looking at his instruments. I am reading energy buildup in the human ship. Their weapons are charging. Kethmos looked at his own weapons officer. Zarkit was young but well-trained. What is the status of our weapons? Oh. Plasma cannons are ready, Admiral, Zarkit reported. Our shields are at full power, but Admiral... Zarkit paused and looked worried. I am reading very strange energy patterns from the human ship. Their weapons do not work like anything I have seen before. What do you mean? Our weapons heat up plasma and shoot it at targets? Most alien weapons work in similar ways. Energy weapons, projectile weapons, missile weapons. But the human ship, it looks like they are bending space itself. Kethmos did not understand. Bending space? Yes, Admiral. They seem to be creating gravity fields and manipulating them as weapons. I have never seen anything like it. Gravity. Weapons? Kethmos had read about such things in science books, but no one had ever built them. The theory said that if you could control gravity, you could crush objects or tear them apart. But the technology was too difficult. No species had ever mastered it, except maybe the humans had. Admiral, Lafan called out, 10 minutes remaining. Kethmos had to make a decision. He could order his fleet to leave and avoid a fight, but High Command had told him to stay. He could stay and risk a battle with weapons he did not understand. Or he could try one more time to make peace. Send this message to the human ship, Kethmos said. We are explorers and diplomats, not soldiers. We have no wish to fight anyone. Our government has ordered us to make peaceful contact with your species. Surely there is a way to resolve this without violence. The human ship's answer came back immediately. We have reviewed your transmission history. You have been monitoring human space for weeks without permission. You have crossed into restricted areas. You have ignored warnings to leave. These are acts of espionage and invasion. You have 5 minutes to begin withdrawal or face the consequences. Espionage, invasion. These were serious accusations. The Zephrians had only been exploring and watching for new species as they always did, but the humans saw it as spying and attacking. Admiral, Zarkit said urgently. The human weapon ports are fully open now. Energy readings are off the scale. Whatever they are planning to do, it is going to be very powerful. Kethmos looked around his bridge. His crew was scared but ready to do their duty. These were good. People who had joined the first contact fleet to make friends with aliens, not to fight wars. All ships, Kethmos broadcast to his fleet. Prepare for possible combat. Charge all weapons, but do not target the human vessel unless they fire first. We will try to defend ourselves if attacked, but we will not start a fight. His fleet of 5 ships moved into a defensive formation. The ships were beautiful even now, their grown hulls shining in the light of distant stars. They looked graceful and peaceful compared to the dark, angular human warship. 2 minutes, Admiral, Lafon reported. Kethmos tried one last message. Human ship Indomitable, we are leaving this area as you requested. Please do not attack. While we withdraw, it was a lie. He was not really leaving. But maybe the humans would let him move his ships to a safer distance while he figured out what to do. The human response destroyed that hope. Sensor readings indicate your ships are not leaving. You are repositioning for attack. This is your final warning. How did they know? Kethmos wondered. Zephrian ships were very quiet and hard to detect. But somehow the humans could see exactly what his fleet was doing. 1 minute, Admiral. Kethmos closed his eyes and said a prayer to the star spirits. He prayed that his crew would survive whatever was coming. He prayed that this would not start a war between humans and Zephrians. He prayed that somewhere, somehow, there was still a chance for peace. 30 seconds, Admiral. All ships, evasive maneuvers, do not fire unless fired upon. 10 seconds. May the star spirits protect us all. Time is up, Admiral. Kethmos opened his eyes and looked at the human ship. For a moment, nothing happened. The dark vessel just floated in space, as still and silent as death. Then the human ship fired. Captain Sarah Chun stood on the bridge of the Terran Navy warship Indomitable. She was 43 years old and had been fighting in space for 20 years. Her uniform was clean and pressed, but her face showed the lines and scars of someone who had seen too many battles. The bridge around her was quiet except for the soft beeping of computers. The walls were made of thick metal painted in gray and blue. Everything was built for function, not beauty. There were no decorations, no art, no plants. This was a warship, and it looked like Sarah watched the alien fleet on her tactical display. 5 ships arranged in what they probably thought was a defensive formation. The ships were strange-looking, all curves and flowing lines, like someone had grown them instead of building them. They were pretty, she supposed, but they looked fragile. "Captain," said Lieutenant Commander James Park, her tactical officer, "the alien ships are moving into attack positions." Sarah nodded but did not look surprised. She had been expecting this. In her experience, first contacts usually went badly. Most alien species thought humans were weak or stupid when they first met them. They usually learned differently, but the lesson was often painful. "What do we know about their weapons?" Sarah asked. "Plasma-based energy systems," Park replied, reading from his instruments. "Similar to what the Centauri rebels used during the war. Their ships also have some kind of organic armor that can repair itself." Sarah remembered the Centauri War. It had lasted 3 years and killed millions of people. The Centauri Liberation Front had thought they could break away from human space and form their own empire. They had been wrong, but it had taken a lot of fighting to prove it. "How many humans did we lose in that war, Park?" Sarah asked. "Approximately 2.3 million military casualties, Captain." "Another 800,000 civilian deaths," Sarah nodded. Those numbers were burned into her memory. She had lost friends in that war. Good people who would never go home to their families. The Indomitable itself had been built using lessons learned from that conflict. "Captain," said Ensign Rodriguez from the communications. "Station, the aliens are still sending diplomatic messages. They say they want to talk." "They always want to talk," Sarah said quietly, "right up until they start shooting." Sarah had read the alien transmissions. The Zephrians claimed this was their space and that they had lived here for hundreds of years, but human records showed something different. Earth had been watching this system for over 50 years. There were human automated listening posts throughout the area. There were human mining claims on 3 asteroids. More importantly, this system was on the direct route between Earth and the human colonies in the Kepler sector. 30,000 human ships use this route every year. If aliens controlled this space, they could cut off an entire sector of human civilization. Status report, Sarah ordered. All weapon systems online, Park reported. Graviton cannons charged and ready. Point defense systems active. Armor is at full density. Engine status? Alcubierre drive standing by, called Chief Engineer Martinez from the back of the bridge. We can jump to FTL on your command. No, Sarah said firmly. We are not running from 5 alien ships. The Indomitable was not just any warship. It was one of 12 Nemesis-class heavy cruisers, the most advanced ships in the human fleet. Its armor was made of matter compressed to near-stellar density, held together by magnetic fields that could reshape reality itself. Its weapons could crack moons in half, but more than that, the Indomitable represented something important. It represented human determination never to be caught weak and unprepared again. After the HFY War, humanity had sworn that no enemy would ever threaten human space again. Captain, Rodriguez said, should I send another warning to the alien fleet? Sarah considered this. The aliens had ignored 3 warnings already. They had crossed into human space without permission. They had been caught spying on human installations. And now they were arranging their ships for battle. In the old days, before the HFY War, humans might have tried to negotiate. They might have offered to share the space or find some compromise. But the war had taught humanity a hard lesson about being too trusting. No more warnings, Sarah said. They have made their choice. She looked at the tactical display again. The alien ships were beautiful in their own way, but they were clearly not built for serious combat. Their hulls were too thin. Their weapon ports were too small. They looked like ships designed for exploration and diplomacy, not war. That was their mistake. In human space, you needed to be ready for war at all times. Captain, Park said, I am detecting energy buildup in the alien ships. Their weapons are charging. Time to contact? The aliens have plasma cannons with an effective range of about 50,000 kilometers. At their current distance, they could fire on us in approximately 6 minutes. Sarah nodded. 6 minutes to decide the fate of 2 species. She thought about the human colonies that depended on this trade route. She thought about the families living on those worlds. She thought about her duty to protect human space. All hands, this is the captain, Sarah announced over the ship's communication system. We are about to engage unknown hostile forces in human space. This is not a drill. All crew to battle stations. Red lights began flashing throughout the ship. Blast doors sealed automatically. Emergency force fields activated around critical systems. In the engineering sections, the ship's massive graviton reactors increased power output. The Indomitable was ready for war. Captain, Park said, the aliens are hailing us again. Put it through. The voice that came through the speakers was translated by the ship's computer. It sounded nervous and scared. Human ship Indomitable, this is Admiral Kethmos of the Zephrian First Contact Fleet. Please, we do not want to fight. We can work together to solve this problem. Sarah picked up the microphone. Admiral Kethmos, you have entered human space without authorization. You have ignored multiple warnings to leave. You have arranged your ships in attack formation. These are acts of war. We are explorers, not warriors, the alien admiral replied. Surely we can find a peaceful solution. Sarah almost smiled. Explorers. That was what they all said. The Centauri rebels had called themselves freedom fighters. The Proxima pirates had called themselves independent traders. Everyone had a nice name for what they were doing. Admiral, Sarah said, you have 30 seconds to begin leaving human space immediately. If you do not comply, you will be fired upon. There was a long pause. Then the alien voice came back, sounding defeated. We dot, dot, we cannot leave. Our government has ordered us to maintain our position. Sarah set down the microphone and looked at her crew. They were all watching her, waiting for orders. These were good people, humans who had volunteered to defend their species and their civilization. They trusted her to make the right decision. Captain, Park said quietly, the alien ships are not leaving. Energy readings from their weapons continue to increase. Sarah nodded. She had given the aliens every chance to avoid this fight. She had warned them multiple times. She had been clear about what would happen if they stayed. Now they would learn what human warships could really do. Mr. Park, Sarah said calmly, you may fire when ready. Aye, Captain. Targeting lead alien vessel. Graviton cannon charging. Sarah watched the tactical display as her ship prepared to fire. The Indomitable's main weapon was unlike anything the aliens had probably ever seen. It did not shoot energy or bullets. Instead, it created artificial gravity fields that could crush matter or tear it apart at the atomic level. The technology had been developed during the darkest days of the HFY War, when human scientists had been desperate to find better ways to destroy enemy ships. They had succeeded beyond their wildest dreams. Graviton cannon ready, Captain. Fire. The Indomitable shuddered slightly as its main weapon discharged. On the tactical display, Sarah watched as an invisible wave of twisted spacetime raced toward the alien fleet. The wave hit the lead alien ship and passed right through it. For a moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then the alien ship simply stopped existing. It did not explode or break apart. It just disappeared, its matter compressed into a point so small that it fell below the threshold of normal reality. Target destroyed, Captain, Park reported in a professional voice. On the communications channel, Sarah could hear screaming and panic from the remaining alien ships. They were shouting orders to each other in their own language, but the computer translated some of it. Fall back, all ships fall back. What happened to the harmony of stars? Their ship just vanished. How's that possible? Sarah felt no satisfaction in the destruction of the alien vessel. She took no pleasure in killing. But she had a job to do, and she would do it completely. Target the second ship, she ordered. Captain. Rodriguez called out, the aliens are broadcasting surrender signals. Sarah paused. Surrender was good. It meant the lesson was being learned quickly. Put them through. The alien admiral's voice came through the speakers again, but now it sounded terrified. Human ship, please stop firing. We surrender. We will leave your space immediately. Admiral Kethmos, Sarah replied, you will withdraw all your ships beyond the heliopause of this system. You will not return without permission from Earth Command. You will report to your government that this system is under human protection. Yes, we understand. We are leaving now. On the tactical display, Sarah watched as the 4 remaining alien ships turned and began accelerating away from human space. They were moving fast, much faster than their approach speed. Fear was a powerful motivator. Should we pursue, Captain? Park asked. No, Sarah said. Let them go. But keep tracking them until they are out of sensor range. Sarah sat back in her command chair and watched the alien ships flee. This had been a minor engagement by human standards. 1 shot fired, 1 enemy ship destroyed, mission accomplished. But for the aliens, this had been their introduction to humanity. They would go back to their people and tell them about the ship that could make other ships disappear. They would describe weapons that bent space itself. They would explain that humans were not like other species. The word would spread. Other alien governments would hear the story. They would learn that human space was not a place to trespass casually. Captain, Martinez called from engineering, all systems nominal. We are ready for whatever comes next. Sarah nodded. There would be a next time. There always was. But maybe the next aliens would be smarter. Maybe they would listen to warnings. Maybe they would choose to be friends instead of enemies. And if they did not, the Indomitable would be ready for them too. Admiral Kethmos watched in horror as his flagship, the Harmony of Stars, simply disappeared. One moment it was there, floating gracefully in space with its blue and green hull gleaming in the starlight. The next moment, there was nothing but empty space where 500 Zephrians had been living and breathing just seconds before. What happened? Kethmos screamed into his communication device. Where is the harmony of stars? His science officer Temrock was frantically pressing buttons on his control panel. His 4 eyes were wide with shock and fear. Admiral, I do not understand the readings. The ship was there, and then it was gone. No explosion, no debris, no energy signature. It just stopped existing. Kethmos felt sick. The harmony of stars had been his home for 10 years. Captain Velinara had been his friend since they were children. Engineer Matak had a new baby at home. Communications Officer Rendell was getting married next month. Now they were all gone, erased from existence in an instant. How is that possible? Kethmos demanded. Ships do not just disappear. Admiral, called his weapons officer Zarkit. The human ship fired some kind of weapon at us, but it was not energy or projectiles. The sensors show they somehow created a gravity field and projected it through space. A gravity weapon? Kethmos had read about such things in theoretical science books, but no one had ever built one. The technology was too advanced, too dangerous. Gravity was the force that held planets together and made stars shine. How could anyone turn it into? A weapon? All ships, evasive maneuvers, Kethmos ordered. Do not let them target you. His remaining 4 ships began to move in random patterns, trying to make themselves harder to hit. But Kethmos knew it was probably useless. If the humans could make ships disappear with gravity weapons, what chance did the Zephrians have? The human ship was not like anything Kethmos had ever seen. Most alien warships were big and obvious, covered with weapon ports and armor plating, but the human vessel looked wrong somehow. It was too dense, too heavy. His sensors said it weighed as much as a small moon, but it was only as big as a large building. That should have been impossible. If something was that heavy, it should collapse under its own gravity, but the human ship was not collapsing. It was moving through space like gravity did not affect it at all. Admiral, Temrock called out, I am reading massive energy buildups throughout the human ship. They are preparing to fire again. Kethmos felt panic rising in his chest. His hearts were beating so fast he could hardly think. 500 of his people were already dead. How many more would die before this was over? Send a surrender signal, Kethmos ordered. Tell them we give up. Tell them we will leave. His communications officer Laffin pressed buttons frantically. Sending now, Admiral. But the human ship did not respond to the surrender signal. Its weapon ports were still glowing with deadly energy. Whatever was going to happen next, it was going to happen soon. Kethmos looked at the tactical display and tried to understand what he was facing. The human ship was alone, but it had just destroyed a Zephrian cruiser without taking any damage. His remaining ships were all firing their plasma cannons at the human vessel, but the energy beams were not having any effect. The plasma strikes hit the human ship's hull and simply stopped. They did not bounce off like they would from normal armor. They did not get absorbed like they would by an energy shield. They just stopped, as if the space around the human ship was somehow different from normal space. Admiral, Zarkit reported, our weapons are having no effect. The human ship's armor appears to be made of some kind of exotic matter that bends space around itself. Exotic matter. Kethmos had heard that term before, but only in the most advanced scientific papers. Exotic matter was theoretical stuff that might exist near black holes or in the center of stars. No one had ever figured out how to create it or control it, but somehow the humans had done exactly that. They had built a ship out of matter that should not exist, armed it with weapons that should not work, and sent it to fight battles that should not be possible. The human ship fired again. This time, Kethmos watched the weapon in action. There was no flash of light, no beam of energy, no projectile racing through space. Instead, space itself seemed to twist and bend around the target. The target was the Song of Peace, commanded by Captain Yersel. She was a good officer who had served in the First Contact Fleet for 12 years. She had 3 children at home who were waiting for her to return. The gravity wave hit the Song of Peace and passed through it like water flowing through a net. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the ship began to stretch and twist as impossible. Forces pulled it in different directions. Kethmos watched in horror as the song of peace was torn apart at the molecular level. The ship did not explode. It just came apart, piece by piece, until there was nothing left but a cloud of atoms floating. "In space, dear star spirits," whispered Laffen. "What kind of monsters are we fighting?" Kethmos did not have an answer. The humans were using technology that was centuries ahead of anything the Zephrians had. They were fighting a war that the Zephrians could not even understand, much less win. "All ships, full retreat," Kethmos ordered. "Maximum speed. Get us out of here." His 3 remaining ships turned and began accelerating away from the human vessel as fast as their engines could push them. But Kethmos knew they were probably not fast enough. If the humans wanted to destroy them all, they probably could. "Admiral," Temrock called out, "the human ship is following us." Kethmos looked at his sensors and felt his blood turn cold. The human ship was not just following them, it was gaining on them. And it was doing something that should have been completely impossible. The human vessel was moving faster than light, without using any kind of FTL drive. It was somehow bending space around itself, creating a bubble of twisted reality that let it travel at impossible speeds. "How fast are they going?" Kethmos asked. "Unknown, Admiral. Our instruments cannot measure their speed accurately. They seem to be sliding through space rather than moving through it." Kethmos tried to understand what that meant. Moving through space was what normal ships did. They pushed against space with their engines and moved from one place to another. But sliding through space meant something different. It meant changing the shape of space itself so that 2 distant points became close together. That was the kind of technology that advanced species only dreamed about. The kind of technology that could reshape reality itself. The human ship caught up with them easily. It moved through the fleeing Zephrian fleet like a shark swimming through a school of fish. Its weapons fired again and again, each shot destroying. Another Zephrian vessel, the Wind of Stars, was next. Captain Mortek had been Kethmos' roommate at the military academy. They had served together for 20 years. Mortek had a wife and 2 daughters who would never see him again. Then the Dance of Moons died. Captain Felron was the youngest commander in the fleet, only 35 years old. She had been so excited about making first contact with a new species. She had studied alien cultures her whole life and dreamed of meeting beings from other worlds. "Admiral," Laffen said, tears streaming down his face, "we are the only ship left." Kethmos looked at his tactical display. 4 ships destroyed. 450 good people dead. All because they had tried to make friends with the wrong species. "Admiral," Zarkit reported, "the human ship is targeting us now." Kethmos closed his eyes and waited for death. He thought about his wife, now Sarah, back home on Zephyr Prime. He thought about his son, young Coulter, who wanted to be a starship captain just like his father. They would never see each other again, but death did not come. Instead, a voice came through the communication system. It was the human captain, speaking perfect Zephrian. "Zephrian vessel, this is Captain Chen of the Terran Navy ship Indomitable. You will cease acceleration and prepare to receive a message." Kethmos opened his eyes. The humans were not going to kill him. At least not yet. "This is Admiral Kethmos," he replied, his voice shaking. We surrender." "Admiral Kethmos," the human captain said, "you will return to your home system immediately. You will report to your government that this region of space is under human protection. Any future incursions will be met with deadly force." "I understand," Kethmos said. "We will leave and never return." "You will also deliver this message to your leaders," Captain Chun continued. "Humanity has been watching your species for several years. We know about your colonies, your trade routes, and your military capabilities. We have been deciding whether to make contact or remain hidden." Kethmos felt a chill run down his spine. The humans had been watching them for years. How? Zephrians had never detected any human ships or probes in their territory. Today's events have influenced our decision, the human captain said. Your government will receive a formal communication from Earth within 1 week. The message will contain our terms for peaceful coexistence. Terms? Kethmos asked. Humanity is willing to establish diplomatic relations with your species, Captain. Chen explained, but there will be conditions. You will respect human territorial claims. You will not interfere with human trade or expansion. You will share information about other species you have encountered. Kethmos nodded, even though the human captain could not see him. I will deliver your message. One more thing, Admiral, the human voice said, and now it sounded cold and dangerous. If your government decides to reject our terms and instead chooses war, remember what you have seen here today. Remember how easily we destroyed your ships. Remember that this vessel is not alone. The communication channel went silent. Kethmos looked at his sensors and saw that the human ship was moving away, back toward the inner system. It moved with the same impossible grace it had shown before, sliding through space like a knife through silk. Admiral, Temrock said quietly. What do we do now? Kethmos looked around his bridge. His crew was staring at him, waiting for orders. These were the survivors, the ones who had lived through humanity's first demonstration of power. They would carry the story back home. We go home, Kethmos said finally. We tell our people what we have learned. We tell them that there is a new power in the galaxy and that we have just learned how dangerous it is to make them angry. As his ship began the long journey home, Kethmos thought about everything that had happened. The Zephrians had thought. They were the advanced ones. They had technology that could grow ships from living matter. They had weapons that could melt metal and boil away atmosphere. They had spread across dozens of star systems and met 17 different alien species, but the humans had made all of that seem primitive. They had technology that could control gravity itself. They had weapons that could erase matter from existence. They had ships that could bend reality to their will, and most frightening of all, they had been watching the Zephrians for years without being detected. If they could hide an entire civilization from galactic view, what else could they do? Kethmos knew that his life had been divided into 2 parts, before he met the humans, and after. Nothing would ever be the same again. The galaxy had just become a much more dangerous place. 3 days after the battle, Admiral Kethmos arrived at Zephyr Prime, the homeworld of his people. His ship, the Garden of Hope, was the only survivor of what had been the pride of the Zephrian fleet. The other 4 ships were gone along. With nearly 2,000 good people who would never see their families again, Kethmos sat in his cabin and stared out the window at his beautiful home planet. Zephyr Prime was covered in blue oceans and green continents. Cities grew from the ground like giant flowers, their buildings shaped from living plants that had been trained to grow into homes and offices. It was a peaceful world where people loved art and music and growing things. But now Kethmos knew that all of this beauty was fragile. The humans could destroy it all in minutes if they wanted to. Their ships could erase entire planets from existence with weapons that bent reality itself. The door to his cabin opened, and his aide, Lieutenant Jarin, entered. Admiral, the High Council is ready to see you. Kethmos nodded and stood up. He had been dreading this meeting since he left the battle site. How do you tell your leaders that everything they thought they knew about the galaxy was wrong? How do you explain that there was a species out there so advanced that Zephrian technology looked like toys in comparison? The High Council met in a great hall at the center of the capital city. The hall was grown from a single massive tree, its walls curved and smooth, its ceiling open to the sky. 12 of the wisest Zephrians sat in a circle, waiting to hear Kethmos' report, High Counselor. Nelsera was the oldest and most respected leader on Zephyr Prime. She had lived for 140 years and had seen the Zephrians grow. From a single-world species to a mighty galactic civilization, her 4 eyes were kind but sharp, and she missed nothing. Admiral Kethmos, Nelsera said as he entered the hall, we have heard terrible news. Is it true that 4 of our ships were destroyed? Yes, High Counselor, Kethmos replied. The Humans destroyed 4 ships and killed nearly 2,000 of our people. A murmur of shock and anger ran around the circle. Counselor Burdick, who was in charge of the military, stood up. How is this possible? Our ships are the finest in the galaxy. Our weapons can destroy any enemy. How could one alien ship defeat our entire fleet? Kethmos took a deep breath. Because the humans are not like any alien species we have ever met. They have technology that is centuries ahead of ours. They have weapons that can control gravity itself. They have ships made from matter that should not exist. That is impossible, said Counselor Morval, who was the chief scientist of Zephyr Prime. No species can control gravity as a weapon. The energy requirements would be enormous. The technology would be too complex. I saw it with my own eyes, Kethmos said firmly. The human ship fired gravity waves at our vessels. The harmony of stars was compressed into a point and disappeared. The song of peace was torn apart at the molecular level. Our plasma weapons had no effect on their armor. The council members looked at each other with fear and confusion. These were the smartest people on Zephyr Prime, but they could not understand what Kethmos was telling them. Perhaps, said Counselor Fentel carefully, the humans were using some kind of trick or illusion. Maybe they made it look like they destroyed our ships when they really just captured them. Kethmos shook his head sadly. No, Counselor. The ships are gone, the people are dead. I felt them die through the quantum communication link. Their life signs simply stopped existing. High Counselor Nelsera raised her hand for silence. Admiral, tell us everything that happened. Leave out no details. For the next 2 hours, Kethmos told his story. He described the impossible readings from the human ship. He explained how the humans claimed to own vast areas of space that the Zephrians had thought were empty. He told them about the gravity, weapons and the exotic matter armor and the faster-than-light movement without FTL drives. When he finished, the council hall was silent for a long time. Finally, Nelsera spoke. If what you say is true, then we are facing a species that is far more advanced than we are. What did they want from us? They gave me a message to deliver, Kethmos said. The humans are willing to establish diplomatic relations with us, but only under their terms. We must respect their territorial claims. We must not interfere with their trade or expansion. We must share information about other species we have encountered. And if we refuse, asked Counselor Burdick, then they will consider it an act of war, Kethmos replied. And after seeing what their ships can do, I do not think we would survive such a war. The council members began talking among themselves in worried voices. Some wanted to fight the humans and defend Zephrian honor. Others wanted to accept the human terms and avoid further conflict. A few suggested trying to contact other alien species for help. High Counselor, said a young aide who had been listening, from the back of the hall, there is an urgent message coming through the quantum communication network. It is being broadcast to all known alien species. Nelsera frowned. What kind of message? It appears to be coming from the humans themselves, High Counselor. A large screen grew from the wall of the council hall, shaped from the same living matter as the building itself. The screen flickered to life and showed the image of a human woman in a dark blue uniform. She had short brown hair and serious eyes, and she looked directly at the camera as she spoke. Greetings to all sentient species receiving this transmission. I am Admiral Rebecca Martinez, Supreme Commander of the Terran Navy. This message is being sent to announce humanity's formal entry into galactic civilization. The council members stared at the screen in shock. The humans were announcing themselves to the entire galaxy at once. For the past 50 years, Admiral Martinez continued, humanity has been observing the various species and civilizations that share our galaxy. We have monitored your communications, studied your technology, and evaluated your political systems. We have remained hidden while we decided how best to make contact. Nelsera felt a chill run down her spine. The humans had been watching everyone for 50 years without being detected. What kind of technology allowed them to hide an entire civilization? Recent events have forced us to reveal ourselves sooner than planned, the human admiral said. 3 days ago, a Zephrian fleet entered human space without permission and refused orders to leave. We were forced to defend our territory. This action has demonstrated our capabilities to at least one species, so we have decided to address all species at once. The image on the screen changed to show a map of the galaxy. Huge sections of space were marked in blue, indicating human territory. Kethmos was shocked to see how much space the humans claimed to control. It was more than all the other known species combined. Humanity claims sovereignty over the regions marked in blue, Admiral Martinez explained. These areas include 847 star systems containing 1,247 inhabited worlds and 12,000 space installations. Any unauthorized entry into human space will be considered an act of aggression. Counselor Morville made a choking sound. 12,000 space installations? How is that possible? We only have 37 installations in our entire territory. The image changed again to show human ships and cities. The ships were massive, dark vessels that looked like they could destroy planets. The cities were enormous structures that stretched across entire continents. Everything looked advanced and powerful and slightly threatening. Humanity is prepared to establish diplomatic and trade relations with peaceful species, Admiral Martinez continued. However, these relationships will be conducted according to human terms and regulations. Species wishing to open formal contact should send a diplomatic mission to the Sol system. The screen showed a list of rules and requirements for alien species who wanted to deal with humans. The list was long and detailed, covering everything from trade agreements to military restrictions to information sharing requirements. Any species that chooses to reject human authority or interfere with human interests will face the full might of the Terran Navy, the Admiral said, and her voice became cold and hard. We have 500 active warships, each capable of sterilizing entire worlds. We have defensive systems that can protect our territory from any known threat. We have weapons that can reshape reality itself. The final image showed a human warship firing its gravity weapon at an asteroid. The asteroid, which was the size of a small mountain, simply vanished in an instant. The demonstration was clearly meant to show what would happen to anyone who opposed humanity. This concludes our announcement, Admiral Martinez said. Diplomatic missions are welcome at Sol. All other contacts should be arranged through proper channels. Failure to follow these protocols will result in immediate military response. The screen went dark, leaving the council hall in stunned silence. Finally, High Counselor Nell Sarah spoke in a shaky voice. How many human ships did she say they had? 500 active warships, Kethmos replied quietly. And if each one is as powerful as the ship that destroyed our fleet, ... He did not need to finish the sentence. Everyone in the hall understood what this meant. Humanity had enough firepower to conquer the entire known galaxy if they wanted to. What do we do? Asked Counselor Fentel. Nelsera thought for a long moment. She was old and wise, and she had seen many changes in her long life. But she had never faced anything like this before. We survive, she said finally. We accept the human terms and we try to build a peaceful relationship with them. We have no choice. Over the next few days, similar conversations were happening. On dozens of worlds throughout the galaxy, the Altarian Council voted unanimously to send a diplomatic mission to Earth. The Sarian Federation immediately recalled all their ships from areas that humans claimed. The Vegan Alliance announced that they were suspending all military operations until they could evaluate the human threat. Not everyone was willing to submit to human authority. The Proxima Empire declared that they would never bow to alien demands. The Centauri Liberation Front announced that they would fight to defend their freedom. The Rigel Consortium said they would not recognize human territorial claims. Within 2 weeks, all of these defiant species had learned the same lesson that the Zephrians had learned. Human warships appeared at their home systems and delivered ultimatums. Most surrendered immediately after seeing what human weapons could do. The few that tried to fight were crushed so quickly that other species barely had time to send observer ships. The galaxy had changed forever. For thousands of years, dozens of different species had shared space more or less equally. There had been wars and conflicts, but no single species had ever dominated all the others. Now there was humanity, a species that had emerged from a single world and spread across the galaxy in just 2 centuries. A species that treated the laws of physics as suggestions rather than absolutes. A species that had built an empire while remaining completely hidden from everyone else. Kethmos stood on the observation deck of a new Zephrian ship and looked out at the stars. He was the new ambassador to Earth, chosen because he was one of the few people who had met humans and survived. In a few days he would travel to the Sol system to begin formal diplomatic relations. He thought about the crew members who had died in the first battle with humanity. They had been good people who had only wanted to explore space and make friends with new species. Instead, they had become the first casualties of humanity's entry into galactic civilization. But maybe their deaths had not been completely meaningless. Because of what happened to them, other species now knew how dangerous it was to oppose humanity. Maybe that knowledge would prevent larger wars and save millions of lives. The galaxy was entering a new age. An age where humanity would decide who lived and who died, who prospered and who struggled, who was allowed to explore the stars and who was confined to their home worlds. It was the age of human dominance, and it had begun with the readings. That made no sense, and the ship that attacked when it should have talked. The age of humanity had begun,